In our daily lives, we rarely experience literal sifting, so it's hard to imagine the force behind it. But in Luke 22:31, when Jesus said, "Satan has asked to sift you like wheat," he used a unique Greek word, used only once in the entire Bible. It describes a violent shaking meant to remove impurities and leave behind only what is pure, like flour being sifted to make bread that feeds others. This isn't just a vivid metaphor, it holds deep spiritual meaning. In God's hands, the purpose of sifting is not destruction, but purification and preparation for a higher calling. What does not belong to Him is removed, and what remains becomes something valuable for His use. The process can be painful, but it is essential in spiritual growth, so that we ourselves might become nourishment for others. Simon Peter was a fisherman, someone who caught fish. Yet in God's plan, he was never meant to stay in that role. After the resurrection, Jesus said to him in John 21, "Feed my sheep." This marked a significant transition, from catching fish to shepherding sheep. But before Peter could nourish others, he needed to be sifted. The sifting wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It was a necessary step for someone God wanted to use more deeply. At times in our lives, sifting signals a turning point, a sign that God is shifting the season and stage of our journey. Interestingly, the Bible doesn't say Jesus sifted Peter, it says Satan did. Yet even Satan needed God's permission. So even when you're facing hardship, attacks of anxiety, doubt, or trials, know this: God allows them not to destroy you, but to refine you. And most importantly, it's only a season, it won't last forever. Through this season of sifting, God is preparing you for a greater role in His divine plan. One truth that often goes unnoticed is this: the more someone is called and anointed by God, the more they must endure sifting. At the Last Supper, Jesus didn't call out anyone else by name but Simon, and He said it twice: "Simon, Simon." Why not Bartholomew, Judas, or Nathanael? Because Simon was the most significant one at the table. He was singled out to be sifted because he was set apart to be significant. This reveals a critical spiritual principle. Great calling comes with great testing. Many people ask, "Why am I always being tested?" But if they understood this truth, they would stop feeling like they're being picked on and realize they are being prepared for something greater. During a sifting season, hidden things are brought to light. Motives, false relationships, unhealthy dependencies. Things that once worked suddenly fail, making you wonder, is this the end? But as long as you're still seated at God's table, just as Peter was, it's not the end. Jesus knew Peter would rise to preach at Pentecost. The sifting wasn't to end him, but to prepare him for a powerful beginning in God's kingdom. There was a profound moment in Jesus' life in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he faced unimaginable agony. This was not just a place of prayer, but a place of intense emotional and physical pressure. Gethsemane, meaning oil press, is where olives are crushed to extract oil, a vivid image of the suffering Jesus endured. It was there that he prayed two powerful prayers. The first was, "Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me." This was a prayer of prevention, a plea to avoid the pain that was ahead. Jesus fully knew the suffering he was about to face, bearing the sins of the world. Yet, even as he voiced his desire for the cup to pass, he added, "Yet not my will, but yours be done." In that moment, he not only accepted the path before him, but found the strength to walk through it, knowing his sacrifice would bring salvation to humanity. This prayer also teaches us about the power of prayer to prevent. There are situations we might avoid altogether, simply because we prayed. For instance, when Moses interceded for the Israelites, God chose not to destroy them despite their sin. Moses appealed on the basis of God's glory, and his prayer held back judgment. We don't always know what's coming, but prayer has the power to shift circumstances and strengthen us to endure whatever lies ahead. The prayer Jesus prayed in Gethsemane didn't end with a plea for the suffering to pass. He followed it with surrender. "Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." This is the prayer of submission, not trying to avoid pain, but choosing to embrace the cross if that is the Father's will. In life, there are times we pray to stop something bad from happening, a prayer of prevention. But there are also moments when God calls us to pray in submission, even if it leads us through suffering. We often think of prayer as a way to change our circumstances, but Jesus shows us that the deeper purpose of prayer is to change our hearts. The prayer in Gethsemane proves that some things in life cannot be avoided, but through prayer we gain the strength to walk through them. Jesus wasn't powerless to escape the cross. He chose obedience. That is the real power of prayer, not to bend God to our will, but to be strong enough to follow His. And sometimes it is in the very act of surrender that we encounter the deepest glory of God. We often underestimate the power of prayer, but the Bible makes it clear. Prayer can alter outcomes. There are moments when fervent prayers have prevented what was about to happen. When Moses interceded for Israel, God chose not to destroy them despite their grave sin. Moses pleaded on the basis of God's name and glory, and his prayer stopped the wrath. This is a clear example of a preventive prayer, a plea that shifts what seemed inevitable. We must take prayer seriously, not merely as a spiritual routine, but as a powerful weapon in the hands of God's children. Some challenges you'll never face, not because you deserve immunity, but because you prayed ahead of time. Prayer is an invisible yet mighty covering over our lives. However, we must also understand that not every prayer changes our situation. Sometimes prayer doesn't remove the trial, but gives us peace, submission, and strength to endure it. Jesus asked for the cup to be taken away, but he still obeyed the Father's will. That was the height of surrender. Prayer is not just about escaping pain, but preparing our hearts to embrace the cross. It is in those moments that God's grace becomes most visible and most powerful.